What history overlooks? Regarding James Longstreet in Lee's surrender at Appomattox. The narrative of Robert E. Lee's surrender at Appomattox is predominantly framed as a moment of Grant's remarkable victory. However, the figure who remained in the background, steadfastly opposing capitulation, deserves attention. James Longstreet, Lee's most trusted general, not only resisted surrender, but actively challenged it. This account reveals the untold story of a commander who safeguarded supply wagons with diminishing hope, silenced officers who urged for a white flag, and confronted Custer's arrogance with a firm declaration, "I would never surrender to Sheridan." Lee's famous declaration, "I would rather die 1,000 deaths," was a reflection of Longstreet's unwavering determination. Even as the Army of Northern Virginia disintegrated, Longstreet commanded a final battle line, a defiant stand that ultimately did not materialize. When Grant reminisced about their pre-war card games, Longstreet remained silent, fully aware of the reality they faced. This moment marked not only the conclusion of the Confederacy, but also the end of a profound camaraderie. Why did Lee refer to him as my old warhorse during their poignant farewell? Why did soldiers express enthusiasm for a surrender they pledged to disregard? And why has history overlooked Longstreet's significant role in the South's final moments? The answers are found in a neglected apple orchard, a seized supply train, and a general who prioritized loyalty over personal legacy. Before we delve deeper, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel to support our community. As the Army of Northern Virginia traversed the routes leading away from Richmond, Longstreet and Lee frequently rode side by side, with Lee often seeking Longstreet's insights. During their initial respite for food and rest, the two generals shared a meal with a family they encountered by the roadside. The hosts expressed unwavering confidence regarding their impending victory. While Longstreet remained silent, Lee remarked, "Regardless of the outcome, understand this: no one has fought more valiantly than those who have stood by my side." By April 4th, the Army had successfully crossed the Appomattox River and reached Amelia Courthouse, where they expected to find ample supplies. To their dismay, there was nothing available. Scouting parties were dispatched throughout the region to collect any remaining food resources. This delay in foraging cost them a vital day, enabling Grant's Union forces to converge on them through parallel routes. Longstreet arranged for Charles Field's and Cadmus Wilcox's divisions to protect the supply wagons during the search. The time lost proved catastrophic. Union troops obstructed Lee's route to Jetersville, compelling Longstreet's forward units to redirect northward toward Farmville. Longstreet organized his seasoned troops into defensive formations at Rice's Station, awaiting reinforcements from Richard Ewell. As they endured the wait through April 6th without any communication from Ewell, Lee's agitation grew. Eventually, news arrived. Ewell's forces had encountered an ambush at Sailor's Creek. Lee rode out with William Mahone's division to evaluate the situation. From an elevated position, he observed the retreating Confederate soldiers and inquired of Mahone, "My God, has the Army disbanded?" The confrontation resulted in the capture of Generals Ewell, Kershaw, and Custis Lee, the commander's own son. That evening, Longstreet withdrew from Rice's Station and led his troops back across the Appomattox toward Farmville. Shortly thereafter, Artillery Commander Brigadier General William Pendleton and other officers approached Longstreet, urging him to propose surrender to Lee. Longstreet declined, asserting that he would never undermine Lee, and maintained his belief that their forces could overcome 4 times their number. Until circumstances shifted, surrender was not a viable option. While Longstreet and Lee took a moment to rest near the Confederate lines, a courier arrived bearing a letter from Grant, demanding the Army's capitulation. The letter stated, in part, that the events of the past week should convince you of the futility of any further resistance by the Army of Northern Virginia in this conflict. After perusing the letter, Lee passed it to Longstreet. Having once shared a friendship with Grant, Longstreet reviewed the correspondence and returned it with a terse response. Not yet. Lee then composed a reply on his own, rejecting Grant's assertion of hopelessness while requesting terms for surrender. He sealed the letter without revealing its contents to anyone and dispatched it via courier. Longstreet later recounted a moment during their retreat that highlighted Lee's fatigue. One evening, after darkness had fallen, we paused at a small, deserted fire. General Lee leaned against a tree and fell into such a deep slumber that I feared he might have passed away. The pressure had deprived him of any rest, despite nature's call for it. The Army continued its march toward Lynchburg, stopping east of Appomattox Courthouse on April 8th. Lee intended to resupply at Appomattox Station, but Federal cavalry under Custer intercepted the supply trains. Union infantry advanced, prompting Grant to send another letter demanding surrender. Lee consented to meet Grant the following morning at 10 o'clock, yet he still harbored hopes of escaping. Believing that only cavalry obstructed their route, he commanded John B. Gordon's corps to launch an attack at dawn on April 9th. Initially, Gordon's troops managed to push back the Union cavalry, but infantry reinforcements soon arrived, sealing the Army's fate. Upon realizing this, Lee remarked bitterly, "Then there is nothing left of me but to go and see General Grant, and I would rather die 1,000 deaths." Accounts vary regarding Custer's audacious ride into Confederate lines under a flag of truce to confront Longstreet. He allegedly proclaimed, "In the name of General Sheridan, I demand the unconditional surrender of this army." Longstreet remained silent, observing Custer until he reiterated his demand, at which point Longstreet retorted, "I am not the commander. If I were, I would never surrender to Sheridan." After escorting Custer away, Longstreet instructed Porter Alexander to establish a final battle line with the divisions of Mahone and Wilcox, marking the last directive the Army would receive. Alexander later asserted that he remembered every detail of that moment. That morning, Longstreet met with both Confederate and Union officers at Appomattox Courthouse. Upon returning to the Confederate lines, he encountered Lee in a small apple orchard where they exchanged brief words. Lee expressed concern that Grant might impose harsh terms, but Longstreet assured him of Grant's sense of fairness. As Lee prepared to depart, Longstreet added, "General, if he does not offer us favorable terms, return and let us continue the fight." This would be their final exchange as commander and lieutenant. Lee ultimately surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia to Grant at Wilmer McLean's residence. According to the terms, Confederate soldiers surrendered their weapons and received paroles to return home. After signing the documents, Lee rode back to his troops, who, despite their cheers, vowed to continue fighting upon learning of the surrender. Longstreet, Gordon, and Pendleton subsequently entered the courthouse as Lee's designated commissioners. As Grant approached McLean's house, he observed Longstreet dismounted and clasping his hands before embracing him. The Union general offered a cigar and jested, "Pete, let us have another game of brag to reminisce about the pleasant old days." Their parting was brief, and Longstreet assisted in the preparations for the paroles. On the night of April 11th, Lee and Longstreet shared their final camp together. The following morning, Lee readied himself to leave for Richmond. During their farewell, Lee warmly embraced Longstreet and then addressed Captain Tom Gorey, saying, "Captain, I am going to place my old war horse under your care. I urge you to ensure his well-being." With that, Lee departed, never to encounter Longstreet again. Later that day, Longstreet set out, reflecting on a civilian existence in Texas, a realm he had not experienced for 27 years. As Longstreet journeyed westward toward Texas, he bore more than just his parole documents. He carried the burden of unresolved inquiries, Why did Lee's final gesture, entrusting his warhorse to a subordinate officer, resonate like a lament for their cause? Why did Grant, moments after concluding the war, jest about card games with the individual who had only days prior declined to surrender? History has relegated Longstreet to a mere footnote, attributing the blame for Gettysburg to him while overlooking his defiance at Appomattox. However, what remains unspoken is this: Longstreet's ultimate line of defense was never intended for combat. It served as a communication to Grant and to history, signifying that the South's resolve did not shatter. It merely bent under the strain of famished soldiers and a general who opted for compassion over legend. Lee's capitulation initiated America's reconciliation, yet Longstreet's narrative? It heralded a reckoning with fidelity, with heritage, and with the reasons we commemorate heroes as unyielding statues rather than as broken individuals softly murmuring, "Not yet," to the unavoidable. Thus, I present this thought to you. When the final embers faded at Appomattox, did Longstreet genuinely believe that Texas could obliterate 27 years of conflict? Or was he already conceptualizing his next confrontation, not with blades, but with the annals of history? Please share your insights below, for this is not the conclusion, it is merely a fissure in the monument. We invite you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more captivating historical narratives.